get started. Do some painting, get some work done today. Be nice. How's it going, Goose? Alright. All the T's are crossed, I's are dotted. This, we've got our table, all of this stuff going on. Let's put that away for now. Bounce the camera. Trying to get everything just the right spot. Got our red drones here to work on. We've got our Commander model. We've got this big chunker who needs to start looking like this guy eventually. And got a couple of bases that I'm working on. The smaller one is for the Commander. And this side here will be the same red and yellow that we've seen on the other models here. And this big one is for the big boy here. He's going to be standing on the base and hopping off the rock. Just went over it with a wash, so it's just about dry. We'll be able to dry brush it here in 20 minutes or so. And this one's already dry and ready. So we'll do some more work on that at some point and get some work done. Alright. So, how are we this fine day? The wet palette got a little wet. Little condensation on the roof here. We were just about done with the red on this guy. Let me double check. We need to do one more coat on that. So let's get the red out. Where is it? And get going here. Kind of slow morning. Got snow last night. Going to shovel the driveway again. Kids are kind of wrapping their brains around snow just kind of being a thing that's there on the ground, and you kind of have to work with it. Where we were living before, it tended to, if it snowed at all, it would snow and then melt by the end of the day. So they're getting used to a world in which snow sticks around. It becomes ice. Try to have a conversation with the youngest one about, even though the pile of snow looks soft because it has the fresh snow on top, it has all that ice underneath. And so don't go throwing yourself into the pile of snow as you did previously. It might seem like an obvious thing, but not when you're 7. Good times. Right. Mix a little bit of water in with this. We'll get this wing. One more coat on the wing here. Love of the red. It's that Imperial red. Bold Imperial red. I don't know how you say it. I'm just going to say it. Looking pretty good. So the plan's to hit this with the at the end with the clear coat, the glossy clear coat to make it like a race car red. Those plans will move forward here. Coating here. We'll hit it with the dry brush at some point. Probably a candle flame. Dry brushing. Underrated nickname, Goose. Fans of Top Gun out there. There's a movie I need to watch again just to see if it holds up. I haven't seen Top Gun in probably 20 years. Curious. Sometimes you watch those old movies and they're just, ooh, cringe. Think of an example. There's an example. Meatballs. The summer camp movie with Bill Murray in it. Very definitely different from what I remembered when I watched it as a kid. Definitely not a kid's movie, but some of the content in there would not fly as acceptable for a main character who is supposed to be an overall good guy, not a villain. Won't go into details, but if you know the movie, you'll know why. The world has changed. So lots of base coating, and the base coating, and more base coating, and all the base coating. Base coating never stops. The base coating will continue until morale improves. You want to mess up your base coat or get impatient and not take the time that needs to be taken on it. 3D printer is running, currently printing another Piper Makes model. It's like a heavy assault drone thing. It's kind of hard to describe. It's kind of a circular looking robot with 4 legs, kind of like a bigger version of the little drones I printed off earlier. 2 big rail guns on it. Should look cool. Go into the pile of all the other things that need to be painted. There should be the February release here soon of the infantry models, at least the smaller scale models that were promised. So that'll be cool. Looking forward to seeing what those look like printed out. It'll be fun to get some infantry done for these. At this point, I'll kind of have to make the decision if I want to go with these guys from the one-page rules as the infantry, or use the Piper Makes Mechanica drone thingies, soldiers. I'll make that call here once I print that first batch of Piper Makes models. I didn't end up, if you were watching the stream before, These were painted yellow, and I just went over them with chrome. I didn't like the yellow and the red. It just makes me think of McDonald's. So I'm gonna do chrome and red and kind of keep the paint scheme going with that I started here with the drones and this commander model. So they'll fit the scheme. How's it going, Steven? What are we working on? Did you make progress on those mechs? It was the Wolf's Dragoons, right? Mind like a steel sieve. I can just remember more stuff now that the hair is gone. It's the key to a good memory. Get rid of all that hair. Alright. This is a handful. Let's see here. Just pick a spot and start painting. This out a little bit. So I have to lean as far over. Just base some mechs, cracking paint. Gonna leave them, otherwise absolutely livid with Irish post. You're gonna have to explain that one. Oh, you mean the post office, I think. Candy Comics, Turkey. Oh, that's a shame. I once, when I traveled over there and hung out with my friend, we had a great time. On the way back, after coming back, I sent out a box of the care gifts, stuff from my state, as a kind of a thank you, and that box just never arrived. It was very sad because I put like probably $150 worth of stuff in this box. It was just out of college, so $150 was a big deal. And it was just lost in the mail, and UPS had no idea where it was. Like, oh well. Some models of the custom. Oh, that's a shame. That sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, international shipping is just a pain right now. Hopefully we'll move past it soon. I'm tired of living through times that test our ability to build character. We'll go back and live in some times where we don't have to worry about building character. If it doesn't kill you, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Well, not necessarily. Sometimes you just get worn out. I did a little let's play this morning of a game that was a little frustrating. Not every game is for everyone. That's fine, I'm sure. There's an audience out there for it. I don't like video games that set you up to hurt children. It's kind of one of my things I can't move past. Sorry. $148 hours. 148 hours, if ever, right? It's the bureaucracy in action. We'll get back to you when we feel like it. This will be done Monday. Monday of what year and what decade. You know. Will any of us still be alive when this is processed? Or is it going to be like one of those World War I letters that just gets delivered 100 years later? So this is looking a little thin because I thinned it with some glaze medium. But it's got red boots. The red boots. It's okay. Definitely going to need multiple coats. That's okay. Yeah, I'm really happy with how this came out. And I kind of cheated a little bit on. I don't expect Piper Makes to ever see this video, but she might spot it. She might spot the issue. I used the hands from the Commander model, this slightly smaller model, in order to give little handholds on the guns here. I thought that looked pretty neat. So if you, it's a little hard to notice, but the scale on the hands is just slightly small. But it's just kind of a cool thing about the models themselves, being the fact that they're all parted out, and you can kind of add what you want and pose it however you want. So it's not monopose. It's a little tricky kind of figuring out what to print, as you get the big file with all of the files in it, and you have to sort out, okay, this is a leg, this is the other leg, or if it only comes with one leg, I have to mirror it in the slicing software. So it takes a little bit of time to figure out what to print, but once it is printed, it's pretty awesome. If I were to offer any sort of critique, I'd probably include a file that says, alright, if you're going to print just the base model, which on some of them there's actually an included plate of organized STL files, so really you just have to put the plate on there and hit print. But some of them don't have that, and then some of them you gotta figure out the weapons and the arms separately. And so you have to figure out, okay, does this weapon go with this this type of arm? Will it attach, or do I need to print a different type of arm? But it's a good problem to have more options rather than less. So as far as complaints go, it's a pretty minor one. Ooh. This will probably keep me busy all weekend. You're supposed to have a couple of people over on Saturday. Do some board gaming. It's been a while. Everybody is naturally COVID resistant from the running with it we had. I'll do this whole leg plate in red. Digging Piper Makes models. One-page rules should have their monthly release here any day now. It should include more Eternal Dynasty models, which are these guys. We'll see what comes out for there. I think there's a mecha unit in that bunch, so we'll see how it stands up to these. I don't mind mixing the two armies. They're similar enough that you can't really tell that they're different too much. I mean, they're both really Tau proxy armies, so it's done with a wink and a nod. Not quite Tau, but similar. Just calming about base coating. You don't have to worry too much about things. It's not as high stress as like glazing or doing the final touches on something. Showing off the top of my head here. I'm gonna turn this camera off. Self-conscious about the back of my head. You don't really need to see the back of my head. You're not missing much. Different, I was talking more into the camera. I doubt anyone's watching to see my face. It makes me paranoid when the 3D printer makes the little sound of pulling up off of the FEP. It makes a little snapping sound when the plastic breaks away from the resin and falls back down to the print screen. And so every single time it almost sounds like there's a problem, but not quite. There's a little paranoia, like, oh gosh, is it ruined already? No. Still going. So you hear a little snap as it hits back on the screen. Happens when you're printing lots of stuff on the plate at the same time. So what are you going to work on when those mechs are done? Or do you have another Lance or Star waiting? I got to get down to the game store at some point because I'm hoping that they'll get the playmats in from Catalyst, the mouse pad style playmats, the BattleTech maps. He said he would order one as soon as he could. There's a bit of a delay, of course. Kind of looking forward to that. When I was a kid and we played BattleTech, we had a big rollout mat that you could write on with wet erase pens. And so we would draw our maps on that. And that worked really well. We didn't want to use the paper ones. Those neoprene mats look cool. An iron guard. A little tricky. Yeah, I suppose how you choose to do that, I suppose, would be the tricky bit. Mind if I ask whereabouts in Ireland you are? It's one of those places I've always wanted to go. We do have some ancestry going back there. Some Scotch-Irish. Though the family did come over in the early 1700s. We can trace our way back to Ireland. Down south. Yeah, it's on our bucket list. Once the world stops being crazy, doing a trip to Ireland and a trip to Korea. Two different directions, but yeah. I'm a fan of Korean history. That was my focus in undergrad, was Cold War Korea. And so I spent my whole life reading lots about this country I've never been to. So it's definitely in a list of places we have to go at some point. We wanted to wait until the boys were old enough to remember the trip. Hopefully we'll get over there, over to Ireland at some point. I had been over to England. Spent 2 weeks over there after college. It was fun. Spend like a week of that time around the British Museum. I went with my sister, and she was a good sport about my history nerdiness. Like, no, we have to do this because of the history. No. Not as big a history fan as I am. But she put up with me. Fun trip. Got to see a friend over in Ealing, and went over to Bath for a couple of days. So got to see the Roman baths there. So overall, a very cool trip. British history and Roman history and mixture of both. I'm just going to make his whole chest piece red here. During the Zoom school last year on Wednesdays, they gave the kids, there were no official classes on Wednesdays, but they gave the teachers an opportunity to kind of run clubs or little classes that would be just voluntary for the kids to show up to. And one of the classes I did was I would do a different country, a different civilization each week. And so one of them was on Ireland. It's pretty cool because it's not something that shows up in your normal American curriculum. We did all sorts of cool stuff. We did a day on the Franks. We spent some time in Southeast Asia. Did a whole day on Inca because I love that story. As you know, if you saw the video that I recently did. Yeah, there's so much cool history the kids just never get to see because there's only 9 months in the school year. And lots of stuff gets left out. Just due to time constraints. So you have basically 6th and 7th grade to cover ancient history all the way up through the Renaissance. And that's not very much time. And they have to do state history. So cramming all of that in 2 years is it's a challenge. You spend like 3 weeks. Hey, we're going to ancient India, and we got 3 weeks to do it. And now we got ancient China. We got 3 weeks to do that too. Doesn't really do anybody any justice. That's for sure. But you do what you can. The idea is at least give the kids a chance to know that such history exists, so that they can go out later and consume it on their own, or take a class in school sometime later. I kind of bristle sometimes when people say, "Oh, well, I wasn't taught this in school." Like, well, you're possibly right, or you weren't paying attention, but the idea was to spark an interest in learning, so you would go out and also learn on your own. So while you may not have been taught it in school, hopefully you learned it at some point due to your interest in learning about history, and that's a good thing. As much as I would love to spend 6 months on ancient Americas, then that wouldn't leave very much time for anything else. That's why we have a survey course. Good times. But we've never had so much information available. That's kind of the coolest thing. Well, kind of a scary thing too. We have tons and tons of information, and to the point where you're overwhelmed by it. I think you can go to ancient.eu or go to Wikipedia and you could spend all day just hopping from history page to history page, and you'll never run out of stuff to read. Hope we don't end up in that kind of Huxley situation where we're all deluged by information and therefore kind of just shut down and don't partake in any of it. A brave new world. So kind of the opposite of Orwell. Thought we'd have information restricted. Instead we have information overload. Surrounded by info but don't want to read it. Don't want to see it. Thank you, bot, for pasting that. Super helpful. Thank you for coming. Still counts as a view. I guess I win, bot. Come along. Alright, I think we will do every other row in his head. That will require a little bit of finesse, and probably a smaller brush. Bonk, bonk, bonk. You can really see the print lines in this helmet. That's okay. A few layers of paint will help. tease, the British buddy who hosted us on our trip when we were over there. He was friends on IRC, and I like to tease him about Americans' understanding of British history and Americans' understanding of the British role in American history. So I like to tease him by saying things like the Patriot were practically documentaries. Sheesh, my brain. Of course, he would take that very personally. He's like, "No, British didn't act like that. They're not just monsters. This is ridiculous. You Americans and your understanding of history is warped." Blah blah blah. All right, just trolling you. Calm down. So between pretty much every Mel Gibson movie is just a really ripe territory for trolling. Between The Patriot and Braveheart, get him going on a rant about Braveheart. That's good times. Did you know it was a documentary filmed in real time? No. So much was wrong. This. Big feelings on the internet. Obviously, you have to go over this several times, but that's okay. It'll look good when it's done. Just keep telling ourselves that. Like speed painted that crab in one evening too. That was awesome. I don't know if you saw that one, Stephen, but it's like had an idea. Let's try a lava effect. And painted the base and hit the under the side of the mech with that red paint, and it just turned out looking pretty cool for a kind of a simple paint scheme. All right, looking good. Too shabby. Alright, gotta keep an eye on the clock here. I am under a time constraint, so probably will not be 2 hours. Actually, no, it will not be 2 hours. So I gotta go do something. Chore I need to accomplish. Alright. Could come down and do that as red as well. I could come down on the legs and do this panel and leave this silver in the middle. That could work. Let's do that. One leg, then the other, just like we're putting on pants. Unless you take a running leap into your pants. I won't judge. wonderful, right? Never mind that William Wallace and what's his name? Robert the Bruce didn't live at the same time, but details, details. Close enough. I can almost hear him yelling from across the ocean. Stop. But at least the Irish were awesome in that movie. So you got your time to shine there. Gotta admit, from a pure cinematic point of view, it's a pretty effective movie. As far as historically, maybe not so much. Come back in with Chrome and fix up those little mistakes. Alright, do the other side. Let's do the other side. Don't have quite so much Chrome. Let's see what other good movies that are not quite so historically accurate. Thinking. I don't know. I'll spring to mind. Mainly just Mel Gibson movies. I wonder what that guy's up to these days. Causing some sort of trouble. Too watery there. Alright, curious angle time. Hard to underestimate the impact of movies on people's understanding of history. It's oftentimes the only place they're really getting it. Except when politicians say silly things. It's also a fun source for nonsense. side by side here. Give me a break from the red. Eyes go buggy after a while. Alright, looking good. Definitely looking related, that's for sure. Alright, let's do some dry brushing. Kind of rubble base. Used the 3D print remnants from supports for some rebar. Turned out looking good. Not too shabby. How's it going, AE? They are from the Piper Makes Patreon. She is doing a lot of really cool mecha models. I'll type it into chat. Oh, Pearl Harbor. That's the movie I was really... That one. Oh, God, what a mess. Oh. Michael Bay. Sheesh. I was really excited for Pearl Harbor. I was like, oh, history buff. They're gonna finally do this. They'll do it justice. And then it was not the movie that I expected or hoped for. That's for sure. And I think a lot of people walked out of that thing and what the heck was that? Just picture you, Stephen, like up on the theater seat, throwing stuff. Stop. No, not the greatest movie. We all learned that Michael Bay can't do historical movies. Let's just not let him anywhere near American history again. Alright, where is that? Gray dry brush paint. It is gone missing. I may have to use some regular stuff. Use wolf gray. Telling you crap. Oh dear. And my great uncles are twins, and they were on the same destroyer during the Pacific War, and they had some pretty interesting stories of the kamikazes, because they would try to get by the destroyers and hit the fuel tank, the fuel and the food ships. Had a few very close calls with planes that nearly hit their destroyer. They were quite terrified of the Japanese and their willingness to go down fighting, literally die fighting. Pretty amazing time. Yep, absolutely. And cruisers too. Yep. I was reading, what was the last one? I think it's called Downfall, but it's a book that talked about the planned invasion of the Japanese home islands, and it's just fascinating looking at their predictions for casualties, and how they were really kind of played down how many they expected to die in the operation, because they didn't want it to be canceled. And so they massaged the numbers to try to push them down to be more manageable before they reported to Truman the last thing they wanted to do was have the whole operation canceled. Pretty rough time. Absolutely. I always bristle around when I see people on the internet bring that stuff up about, oh, we should have not dropped the bombs and all that. That's a whole, it's almost a political debate at this point. You need to understand that it was a series of rotten choices. Almost none of them were good choices. It's the nature of war. I have a tendency to agree with that. Hopefully it won't. One of those terrible things that happens that will never have to happen again, because we learned, hopefully learned our lesson about nuclear weapons and the consequences of that being the most unpleasant of things to do to a city. One of my favorite books on my shelf is actually called Hiroshima Diary, and it's written by a Japanese doctor who he was outside of the town when the bombs fell, the first bomb in Hiroshima, but showed up shortly after and was treating the survivors, and basically just not having any idea what was going on or why people were seemed fine after a day or two, but then started getting really sick, and that's because the radiation poisoning sets in and starts causing all that internal damage. Learning for the first time what the actual consequences of the nuclear weapons were. Pretty awful. But first edition. It's good. Good book. I think it might still be in print, but I guess I haven't checked. Cut the edges. A little bit of Space Wolf Gray there. Wolf Gray, not Space Wolf Gray. Sorry, Army Warpager. Yeah, just looking at the casualty numbers for Okinawa and Iwo Jima, even Tarawa, not looking good for the Japanese civilians that were brainwashed into thinking that they were doomed if the Americans won. Power of propaganda. Those are actually the two movies, The Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. That's two movies I actually really enjoyed. Thought they did a good job of telling both sides of the story, both perspectives of the story anyway. Yeah, it would have been pretty traumatic for the Japanese people, as if it wasn't already, by the end of the war. Alright. You know what? I'm kind of beat. I think I'm going to call it a day here. I've got the few chores I need to do before the kids come home. So I'm going to wrap this up a little early. Awesome talking to you again, Stephen. Take care. AE, if you're here, keep up the good work. Be awesome, everybody.